As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries.
Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, and hey, even if you identify as a vintage can of crystal clear Pepsi, we're here for you tonight because we welcome all people, including our great friend. We've got Ray here tonight. Matt is off, but tonight we've got live via satellite from Germany. Actually, that's not true. It's just going through the internet, but just believe that we have a satellite uplink, and he's military. He can set that kind of shit up. We've got a gentleman who is incredibly well-spoken, even more eloquently well thought, and he's about to have 2 children under the age of 2, so I'm not going to talk about what he does best. I'm just going to let you draw your own inferences and take it from there. Robert Palmer, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. It is a honor and a privilege to be on the same stage with you, 2 fine gentlemen, this evening. Looking forward to these articles we're going to get in. And just looking for a good night.
Well, you know, the good thing, and I'm glad that you're here because I think you bring a fresh perspective, and it'll be good to have you here. I don't know that you'll get quite as riled up as what Matt will, so we'll see how the dynamic goes and everything like that. But you know, the best thing about being on the same stage with you is that we saved some money tonight because we didn't have to hire a stunt comer to come in for this, so that's good too. Now, without further ado, we'll dive into those articles. J Pink, roll that headlines footage.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
Well, the news out of Europe, not so good here, boys and girls. Fertilizer rescue plan brings no relief to Europe's farmers and industry. So Dateline here, the crunch on nitrogen-based fertilizers isn't the only issue for farmers in Europe that have been grappling with the war in Ukraine, and also some tariffs and some other institutions out there that are not really looking out for their best interest, Ray. The new communication simply fails to provide concrete answers to the shortcomings faced by European farmers. So basically, what they're saying here, guys, is that because of the natural gas situation over there that we've covered at length here, and how Yara and other manufacturers have sort of cut into how much that they're going to supply based on the fact that it's just too expensive to supply, right? They kind of came up with this plan, right, that the EU out of Brussels, right, that kind of collectively watchdogs and is supposed to shepherd through all the farmers and everything like that. They are trying to make sure that there's a plan in place to for fertilizer manufacturers to obtain their natural grass and keep everything running. So the article goes on to say here, but the adopted text is no longer as explicit, with the Commission instead pointing out that member states may prioritize the continued and uninterrupted access to natural gas for fertilizer producers in their national emergency plans in the event of gas rationing. So what they're saying here, guys, is that essentially, they're giving them a pathway, right? They're giving the manufacturers a pathway. Hey, we can give you everything you want and everything you need. Maybe, we hope, but if there's a national emergency, or if the government in your home country or the EU decides that you don't need it, well, we're going to step in and say so. So again, we're on this energy situation, and Robert, you're living in the middle of the epicenter of this right now. So I'm very curious to hear, what's the local, vibe, and what is the local feelings around, just the energy situation there. Gas prices, natural gas prices have shot up. People are worried that it's going to be a cold winter and all that kind of stuff. So what are you seeing, hearing, feeling there on the ground in Germany?
You hit the nail on the head, man. Most of the locals are just hoping for a warm winter. For those comments that you just made, the longer it stays warm, which it actually has been maintaining an awkwardly warm temperature, um, because the fuel prices and the natural gas prices have increased easily 30 to 50% in some of the regions out here. Luckily for me, I am in the military, so I'm already rationed for fuel at a discounted cost. They removed the tariffs for us. So as a American here supporting the country in these times, I know it's a really stressful period for the local populace. They're hoping for a warm winter, and the faith and government I can see is definitely swaying on how this will go. It's unfortunate. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Ray, the part that I wanted to talk to you about here on this one is, they talk about sort of the things we've talked about here domestically, right? Where they're not letting a crisis go to waste, and Brussels is saying that, hey, there's an over-reliance on synthetic fertilizers. We need to get away from this. What a great wake-up call, guys, right, for us to be able to have this opportunity and to usher out, these types of products. And so there's a couple of quotes here in the article that I thought that were interesting here. They say that fertilizers are notoriously overapplied across the EU, but there is a limit to how much nutrients crops can take in. A study in Germany found that only 61% of fertilizer is reaching wheat crops while the rest is wasted. No link or source on that study, though. So again, there's
no link or source, and here we go with government coming in and literally creating a solution or mandating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Because Robert and Ryan, how many times have I said that, growers and farmers and producers, they all are already, basically walking a tightrope, even under ideal circumstances, where if the amount of inputs that they put into a given hectare of, say, wheat exceeds the income that they're going to get from that given area, it just doesn't add up. Because the way that these various governments talk, it's as if they think that the farmers just spray and spread everything willy-nilly, without regard. Whereas last time I checked, the fertilizer fairy and the herbicide fairy doesn't just visit their barn, wave a magic wand, and boom, there's a pallet of fertilizer and a drum of herbicide in that barn. I mean, it doesn't happen. I mean, it kind of chaps my butt when I hear that, oh, there's waste, there's over application. Where? I mean, because even under ideal circumstances, I know darn well that farmers are some of the least wasteful people I know. They just can't afford to. They can't afford it.
That's the interesting part of the article, is they talk about how farmers have bought substantially less fertilizer this year at those higher costs, right? And have basically said, we're not going to do it. So be interested to see if these groups think that things come in more equilibrium, or their data or whatever methods that they're using to substantiate these numbers about how much is wasted and not, all that kind of stuff bears out here. But real quick before we move on to the next one, Robert, I mean, from a gardening standpoint, I know that you are a huge gardener, and for the folks that don't know, turf is not your only thing, even though it's your nickname. Garden as a nickname is just not going to work for anybody, I don't think. But my question to you there is, on a small scale, or the folks that you've interacted with here in the States, across there in Europe, at that scale, right? It's not a production farm or anything like that, but how do you view people, taking their approach to fertilizing gardens, right, for food production over there versus here in the United States?
I'd say that they're somewhere along the same lines. From the aspect of your average backyard gardener, because of statements like these unfounded, non-substantiated claims that are being made, and the lack of education, most backyard gardeners are very timid and wary of using anything that's synthetic anyway. They take a sense of pride of the movement of everything's organic, even though they really don't fully understand what those principles means. So I'd say they're neck and neck. The European
Okay.
culture definitely leans further towards, hey, leans in harder, and I think they would have they actually are better educated on what organic gardening is and what it should look like. And I would argue in the States, unfortunately, is closer to the gluten-free phase that we had ranging through the States about 5 to 6 years ago when we were putting gluten-free labels on bags of rice. So that's my perspective on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, for one,
Yeah.
if you haven't noticed, for those of you that have seen me in person or not, I do not participate in gluten-free anything. So
neither do I. Neither do
And-
I. I mean, gluten-free
have
my
more-
foot.
and you couldn't have more of a disparity in body type, Ray, but here we are in the same club, and that's why I love you, sir. All right, moving on to our next article here. Public sounds off on Watsonville pesticide notification program. This is out of the Santa Cruz Sentinel out there in beautiful California. So they're showing here that they're trying to do a notification program for a very sensitive community here in and around the city of Watsonville. So on Thursday, more than 200 people gathered virtually to voice opinions on a pesticide notification program occurring in Watsonville and other sites around California. In 2021, the California Department of Pesticide Regulation announced pesticide notification programs to increase transparency around pesticide application. So after a public comment period, the department selected 4 sites to pilot the program, including Watsonville. So, they're testing this stuff out there, and coming up this July, the senior village community, right? They've got the sort of not assisted living from what I researched, but more of a retirement community, gentlemen, that they're going to be doing this where essentially they'll put out a warning 72 hours in advance, and then from there, it's not really like they can stop it or anything like that. It's just to give them 3 days notice that, hey, something is going to be applied, and I think they'll give them the active ingredients. What's interesting here is, so they talk about, one of the owners of the farms nearby participated in the Watsonville pilot program as they start to roll out last year, and said that the current process was straightforward. However, he's worried that a longer notification time and a requirement to notify for all pesticides would be a step too far. I don't know how I'm supposed to notify hundreds of people every time we apply a pesticide, Ice Camp told the Sentinel on the day of the meeting. We're making decisions on the fly as far as pest pressure. We have to respond. We cannot wait 72 hours. So, gentlemen, I'm curious because, we all make pesticide applications, right? And, we all want what's best for the public and the people that are around, not just on the properties that we treat. So, what say you about a government administered program like this, number one, and number two, what steps, if you were going to deal with neighbors, deal with adjoining properties, things like that, and you knew that there were sensitive communities there, what steps did you take that weren't maybe necessarily required by law, but maybe out of professional courtesy or whatever? What do you guys think about that?
Okay, I can start because, as you know, I'm frequently treating in extremely densely populated areas. And this all goes back to good product stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I am not that guy trying to make an application in a 15 or 20 mile per hour wind. I know some people that do. Irregardless, they get their hands slapped or worse. But every time something like that happens, it puts a real black eye on our industry and anybody that deals in pesticides, because then the perception is, oh, these people, they spray, they don't care, and we need to shut it all down and stop it all. So and even on a day that is considered, lower risk for drift,
Mm-hmm.
I do everything possible to mitigate and minimize drift. Because again, I don't want to be that guy where they see me working and there's a cloud of spray, just coming off of that property and floating through the entire neighborhood. I don't want to be that guy. So, and speaking to commercial growers and farmers, I can tell you that the commercial operations, they sometimes are their own worst enemy, because I remember when seed corn research and seed corn production was really big here in Hawaii, and I saw something that just alarmed me. Never mind what it looked like to uneducated people. I saw a high clearance boom sprayer going through a corn plot, and the spray drift was incredible. The spray drift was just going several feet beyond the field. And of course, again, I kind of understand, I get it. However, I'm just thinking, for the uneducated and the fearful person, what does that look like to them? And by the way, as a result, seed corn operations in Hawaii are essentially gone. No more.
Oh, because of the drift potential on those applications?
Well, because of the drift potential, and because essentially people got on the asses of their representatives and wanted it shut down. I mean, they wanted to write pesticide regulations in such a way that would make it virtually impossible for a grower to operate. And they succeeded. Because last time I checked, Syngenta, DuPont, Pioneer Hybrid, etc., they all packed up and they left. They're gone.
Robert, I mean, on this perception side, like, well, and you're dealing with it now, probably with where you're at, I would think, right? How freaked out do your neighbors get, especially the natives, right? Where it's like, holy shit, there's a guy out there with a backpack sprayer right now. Like, what's the what is
Time's
the
up, it's
feelings?
over.
There you go. They're like, all right.
So for me, I had to go through a very lengthy process to even do what I'm doing out here. They put me through the paces for me to prove my competency in being able to even start digging up and reseeding this entire lawn. So the neighbors at this point, they've gotten used to it. I'm sure they're still interested when they see me doing things, but there's a sense of peace because they know that I have permission to do everything that I'm doing out here through the local public work system that works out here. But the thing that disturbs me most about this article here, I will tell you, Ryan, is it lacks education, right? So we're opening up a Pandora's box where you're putting a litigation on professionals who should be acting professionally, right? Not like what Ray just described. So if you're within the realms of doing what you're supposed to be doing as a professional applicator, and my man, he hit a nail on the head saying some things you have to react to in 72 hours, your crop is gone. So I think a better way, a better approach for the government to do is maybe create some type of notification system. Like he said, how is he supposed to reach hundreds of people, potentially thousands of people, depending on highly densely populated areas? Develop a website or an app where this population that are interested, that are so interested in what's happening in their area, not only with the notification, but with some type of education on those things that those farmers are applying within regulation and properly. That way, not only are they being notified when it's happening right then their day, like they can get a note, okay, this happened this day. Okay, and this is what they applied, and this is why they applied it, and this is what it's going to do. And we just need to stay out of this area for the next 12 hours. I think that would be a lot more, because if you don't do that, and you're just notifying people, hey, he's going to go out there and spray XYZ. And then they're going to go down the rabbit hole where everything causes cancer. And then next thing you know, that pesticide is going to be banned. I think this open-ended transparency without education is going to lead to more banned pesticides. That's the end state. It's going to be terrible for the green industry overall without
Robert,
education. So just that's where
I can agree with that. I can agree with that because the seed corn researchers and growers were faced with that exact type of notification system for all applications, and as a result, they just said fuck it and they packed up and left. Because here's a little fun fact. Okay, at the core of the issue was the notification system placed special notification requirements on restricted use pesticides. And the perception is that, a restricted use pesticide is restricted because it's extremely toxic. Yes and no, because here's a fun fact for you all that are following along. Did you know that the bifenthrin that you routinely apply to your lawn and around your house for insect control is a federally restricted use pesticide once it is labeled for application to a growing agricultural crop? Did you all know that? Bifenthrin. Okay? Everybody knows bifenthrin because that's like one of the most commonly used insect controls. But a seed corn grower, for example, needs to use bifenthrin to control certain insects in their crop. But that falls under the umbrella of restricted use pesticide requiring the special notifications and record keeping, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you, Robert. This is going to cause alarm with no context. There is no context because, because this is all about putting all information in its proper context, and that is not being done. And by the way, I can't help but notice anytime there's a mandate to notify, that mandate is always put upon the applicator or the grower to put out those notifications. It is never put out on the authority that is mandating the notification itself.
Well, and
so in other words,
go ahead.
And to me, that is essentially, to my eyes, that just looks like a backdoor ban. Why don't you just tell me to my face that we're banning it, we're prohibiting it? Yeah, just tell me to my face already. I mean, don't play games. Because this whole notification thing is playing a game of incremental restrictions leading to total prohibition. No more, no less.
Educate, don't litigate.
Yeah, I like that.
The last thing I'll say there is I agree with you, Ray, on that last point, that I think we need to find a way, right, with the system. And California's committed $10 million here originally to go out and do this, right? And I think it's something important where, they have to get, if you want to get buy-in from people, right? If you want to have an opportunity to sell it to the people that are going to use it most frequently, it's got to be easy to use, right? Like, and I think you're going to see failures. You're going to see stuff falling through the cracks. So I would love to see a system where, essentially, somebody could mark out their fields, have everything mapped out, and say, hey, we're going to treat this field today. And if you were a California resident or you're visiting or whatever, you can download an app, and it will track you by your GPS and say, oh, hey, guess what? You're entering a 1 mile, 1 mile radius within, something that was applied within the last 12 hours, 5 hours, 5 minutes, whatever, right? I think we can get there.
Yep.
I think that's a much more approachable system, but who knows?
Absolutely.
I'm not in tech. I'm not in tech. I just kill grass.
No,
Yeah,
you're
but
not in tech.
When your aim
This is
when
common
your aim
sense.
isn't to yeah, when your aim isn't to educate and it's a backdoor ban, then you don't care about that. If you really just wanted to be transparent about what's happening, you would do exactly what you and I just said, Ryan. But to Ray's point, I don't think the end game is to educate and have more transparency. No, the end game is to trick you to think, oh, I just want to, hey, can I just search your car real quick? It's okay. You know, it's just a routine stop. And then next thing you know, you're going to jail for the next 6 months to 3 years. That I'm your friend. And then now I'm not your friend.
Yeah, you see, no, you know what, Robert? I'm glad this is coming from you because, Robert, it was Veterans Day, right? And first of all, I think this needs to be said. Thank you for your service to our country and to our world. Okay? Thank you. But
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
speaking to your point about this is like a backdoor ban in disguise because, hey, if we wanted to merely provide transparency, provide information, why is this being made into such a burden and a hassle for the grower? Because, you know, Robert, as is in, at least in the state of California, to my knowledge, growers are required to notify the state agriculture board whenever they apply something anyway. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. No,
They are required to make that notification. Is that if they apply something, the state agriculture board has record of that application. And I do believe that it is not after the fact. It is, at time of or before the application anyway. So this is just adding another layer because, hey, the state already has this information. Why are they themselves not putting it out there that, okay, this field is getting treated on this day at this time, etc. And, this is the purpose of the treatment. Done, right? I mean, you see, what I look for is in various mandates, etc., when complexity is built into it. I look for that. That's a red flag to me.
Well, and again, there's a lot to unpack with how it's being implemented and the risk that you assume in being in the community as a whole. I think the activist side of things would come back and say, well, these are these move or these for whatever reason, right? We're more risk with these pesticides.
And I got to counter
down, not in their concentrated form, but they're also like, okay, what about when the steel foundry down the street fires up the blast furnace and dumps a bunch of I'm just saying there's so many things that were around each day.
There's so many things, yeah.
And
Ryan,
and that's go ahead.
I'm gonna say this is that look it. Did I tell these people to move within a quarter mile or less of a production farm? Did I tell them to do that? Because that is the very issue that these seed corn producers and researchers ran into, is that you have all of these people that they weren't there before, but they, bought a house right next door to the field. It's like, what do you think was going to happen if you buy a house right next to a field. I mean, come on. Use some common sense, because it's become a case of okay, these people move in, the farm was there first, and now they're going to tell the farm, oh, you can't do that anymore. No, by the way, that is the very story of why there is no more agriculture in Hawaii. None. The only thing that exists are gourmet organic greens. I mean,
Ray,
that's the only agriculture that
gourmet
that
organic
exists here. I mean, that's the only agriculture that exists.
Ray
And
eating an
that's
entire
cool.
trough of those every night, like a rabbit. Like a rabbit. I can see it now.
Do I look like a
one struck a
rabbit?
chord. This one struck a
Ra-
chord for sure.
I don't know. So Ray, I think you're right though. It's a case of, who was here first, who's doing things legally and everything like that. And yeah, you want to be a good neighbor, but at some point, either you're following the law or you're not. The notification system, while important, I think for people that are sensitive to those things, right? To have to do it to everybody, I think is going to draw a lot of scrutiny. Which, hey, scrutiny's fine, but scrutiny without any merit behind it is wrong. And I'll tell you, a perfect example of this, Ray, is the strip club that was there before the housing development went in. I'm pretty sure that's how we ended up with pasties in this world. So again, another attempt at government overreach, ruining the fun for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep.
Now it's time for Geno's Turf.
Geno's Turf! Hi, I'm Joe. I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate turf facts today, because Joe knows turf.
Gentlemen, tonight's comes from what Matt calls, I think, what does he calls it? Spacebook, Crackbook. It's from one of the lawn care groups on the Facebooks. And JFink, go ahead and throw this up here. This came into us Friday night. We've removed the gentleman's name that put this on here. So this is from the Turf and Ornamental Pesticide Applicators, TOPA, on the Facebook. It's a group that basically is just guys and gals that have their own businesses and are anywhere from first timers all the way up through seasoned pros. And so this gentleman says, I need help with pricing a job. This will be my first pesticide application and don't quite know how much to charge. I got my pesticide license in the mail today, and I have a client wanting a weed and feed spread on the yard. I have some numbers that I feel are about right, but just checking to see about where everyone else is at. It's 12,000 square feet and $70 a bag. So, okay.
Oh dear.
Now listen. So here is the Joe Knows Turf part of this, right? So, I know that we have people, in all ranges of the industry in terms of DIYers. We have folks that are, thinking about or doing things like on the side, just a little bit here as a side hustle. We've got people that are just starting out, right? They've gone full in or all in on doing this as a gig, and you've got people that have been around the block for a long, long time. I think it's always a healthy exercise to understand pricing and to understand where the market's at. So for this particular exercise, right, the Joe Knows Turf portion here is not to rip this guy's asshole, but we'll start there for just a second here. Listen, just because you have people wanting you to do this, and just because it's your first day with your license, first week with your license, even your first year for your license, you have got to fucking crawl before you run. Okay, so understanding the why, right? Kyle, looking at you, buddy. Love you, man. You really have to understand why it is what you're going to do, what you're going to use, because we just went on for a whole 15-minute segment there about all the bad things that can happen legally or perception-wise related to pesticide applications and or fertilizer applications. So, gentlemen, I would just ask you, because, Robert, even in your case, right, you said you had to demonstrate, knowledge, skills, abilities, right, experience, just to be able to do what you want to do in your now home country, right, for the time being. So from a standpoint of a new applicator, how would you advise folks to get to the position where they can feel both comfortable and confident that they're ready to go out and charge money for making applications? Let's start there real quick.
I'd like to first, I'm going to congratulate him for taking, or her for taking the time to go and get their license. That's the first step.
True
then-
statement.
Yeah. So good on you for doing whatever requirements that are in your state for getting your license before you stepped out and did this. The next thing that I would advise to get after your question is really spend some time. Like, this is, I'd put this up there with the professions like welding, things that if they go wrong can cause grave danger to the environment or people, right? So with that being said, I think getting a lot of practice in on your personal lawn, legally, of course, having some type of mentor, right? I think mentors are really important when you're stepping into a job of profession. Mentors not on the internet, but a local professional that you can reach out to. A good example would be my buddy Aiden, right? I think he's 17 now, 18 now, and he's had a mentor since he was 15. And that person was able to pour into them that the things and the trials and tribulations and pricing things out and doing things that just made sense economically from a business perspective. The prices that he threw up and the amount of square feet, that it leaves me with so many questions, of course, as I imagine everyone in the chat. And we're here to be nice and not necessarily tear him a new one or her a new one. But get a mentor. That I think that's what I can. That's the solid. Get a mentor that you can go to, talk to, whether it's at your extension office or your buddy that owns a company, so where you can lean on these people privately, not put it out there into the interwebs, because you're going to get. I think that it had maybe 52 comments on there. Oh, I could only imagine what those comments were saying, and I doubt
Some
any
awful
of them
ones.
were very. Yeah, they weren't very kind in trying to drive him and guide him, because because he's got it halfway right, or she has it halfway right. They have their license. So whether it's a side hustle or something they're really trying to fully lean into, one thing that I have to really take my hat off to is that you took the time to go get your license. Everything else after that, you need a mentor. That's what's clear to me. You need someone in your corner that's going to help guide you through whatever you want your business to be. And it's very clear that you lack mentorship.
Now, Ray, I want to tack something on to this question for you. First, I want to say something. That is a fucking phenomenal point. And it can't be overstated enough, right? That the reason that people are here watching us and the people that we have around us, right? We're not just spewing this stuff out because it just came to us in some premonition or, some David Koresh, Branch Davidian prophet-like way, right? Like that shit didn't happen, right? We've learned and we have built out networks of people and resources that we trust implicitly, and we always challenge, though, right? We always want to get better, and so I think it's an important piece of that. So, Ray, real quick, with the time we have left in this segment here, what would your advice be on this person getting comfortable, confident to enter that marketplace, and two, a little bit about just pricing strategy for somebody who's new, just a couple, 2, 3 tangible things, right, that they should have in mind when they start to look at pricing for their own services, not the green dock. Listen, either you're going to have me take care of your lawn or I'm going to cut you with a scalpel.
Well, first of all, this guy or this gal, good idea for him to, first of all, know his material cost per 1,000 square feet. Also, he needs to have a handle on his hourly or daily overhead. Because when somebody starts talking to me about, oh, this material costs, so many dollars a bag or bottle, I'm like, okay, what does that cost per 1,000 square foot? And what are all of your costs for you to be out there that day making that application? What are all of the costs? And lastly is, on top of that, Ryan, and this is my favorite part, is after you've paid for your material, after you've paid for your overhead, what do you think you are worth? Okay? What do you think you personally are worth? I mean, are you doing this job at cost, or
A lot.
do you want to be able to make a living on this? I mean, those are my questions, because I, have answers for those questions for myself every time I take a job. And lastly, on the mentorship thing, I cannot agree more. You need to have somebody who is not a chuck in a truck, but is a guy who knows what's going on, knows what he's doing, kind of be your mentor. And oh, by the way, I had very good mentors, but those mentors were an unlikely group of people, because I gravitated towards the sod producers and the golf guys. Okay, I didn't gravitate towards the lawn and landscape people. I went towards the sod producers and golf guys, and that's why I have a different understanding of, turfgrass management.
Well, and I think that's it too, right? Varied experiences, right? When that's one thing that chaps my ass, right? I will say that is this whole idea that we are siloed. Like, hey, lawn guys, there's nothing that you have in common with golf guys, and golf guys, there's nothing you have in common with sports turf guys. Bullshit. We're all taking care of the same crop. Now, there are nuances, there are differences, there are things that you need to learn, right, that are specific to that discipline, right, of a home lawn, whether it's a high-end one or, the drunk soccer mom who, rips 8-ball lines in the school pickup line, but that's irrelevant, right? All those lawns matter, right? All lawns matter, right? And all grass matters.
Time's up, it's over.
There you go. Matt Martin telling this guy, listen, go out and get yourself a mentor there, sir. I'll make a reply on there and we'll see. But some of the comments on there were just outlandish.
Nasty.
Not like picking on, there was some that were picking on the guy, but a lot of it was just like, oh man, like arguing about liquids versus granulars. And listen, that's the last thing I'll say on this is you expose yourself when you said, hey, I'm going to do weed and feed on Bermuda in mid-November. Bro, the last thing we need to be talking right now is pricing, right?
With the license, he's licensed or she's licensed.
What do they say on those those prostitution sting cops episodes, Ray? It's not illegal until you agree on an act and a price. This guy would have been damn near illegal in that case. So, all right, moving on here. We're going to jump over to the birds. Sheila is she's excited for Thanksgiving because it's the time of season to get rubbed with butter and stuffed. So she's got that going for her. Jumping over here to Scarsdale, New York. All right. So Scarsdale, we had an article linked up last week, and I don't think we got to it because of time constraints. But Scarsdale, New York, they put it to a vote here this past election day. Regarding banning pesticides and their use on public grounds, on village grounds, right? So, as trustees turn their attention to the potential pesticide ban midway through the evening, Deputy Mayor Randy Whitestone began the public discussion. This hearing is to consider the creation of Chapter 236 of the Scarsdale Village Code entitled Pesticide Use on Village Property. He said, adding that the law would merely codify the pesticide-free practices Scarsdale already adheres to on public property. We're doing our best to eliminate the use of pesticides, said Vernon. Whitestone added that creating a formal pesticide ban for the village green spaces would hopefully make businesses and residents willing to forgo them as well. Evie Schiff, a young Scarsdale student, was the first to speak. I'm definitely in favor of this, she told trustees. Pesticides are toxic chemicals, and no matter what form you try and apply them, they end up seeping into the earth, which is not healthy for the earth, and it's definitely not healthy for us. In general, a lot of plants over time become more immune to pesticides, which means you end up needing more and more, which is more and more toxic and harmful. God damn. That was not part of the quote, by the way. She added that pesticides can also affect the health of Scarsdale's youngest patrons at the municipal pool, as children run often in the grass barefoot. Michelle Sterling, chair of the Scarsdale Conservation Advisory Council, thanked the trustees for their willingness to consider turning the ban into law. It's not always easy to be a leader, but we've been doing this for many years now. I want to thank all of you for taking this next step and helping us be a leader in this area. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, this is Ann Hintermeister. Wow. A member of the Scarsdale Forum showed an adult perspective. Human and environmental hazards of pesticides are well supported even by increasing amounts of scientific evidence that's been presented by the Scarsdale Forum committees and the Village Conservation Advisory Council. She also warned that chemicals are particularly dangerous for children and pets. They are smaller and lower to the ground. In the case of children who have developing nervous systems and organs, there's simply no justification for treating playgrounds or playing fields or recreational facilities with these products. So again, we go on and on. If there are pesticides in that grass, they are definitely getting onto your skin and into you. Oh boy. And teens that come from far to playoffs don't deserve to have sickness just because they came here to play. It's unfair. What? Oh God. Jeez. Okay. There's so much going on here. All right, so gentlemen, listen. I admire the implementation of democracy and the way that Scarsdale's chosen to handle this. Right? They've done it apparently voluntarily for years, and now they're just making it law, which is, I don't know. I mean, like marrying your live-in girlfriend of 9 years, like what's the fucking point, right? I mean, it's common law at this point, whatever. But my question to you guys is, what would you say, right? Let's say that you had the opportunity, we flew into Scarsdale to speak that night. Do you talk to these people about what you know as an applicator? Obviously you're the enemy and everything like that, but what do you say? And I don't mean like you can't get all emotional and fired up and pissed, although maybe you can. But what would you say if you had the opportunity to provide a counterpoint or a opposing perspective there?
Well, my perspective would be is that once post application drying time has been observed and or products have been watered in as they're supposed to be, hazard to humans is minimal. Now, if you're going to let your kid roll around on freshly sprayed grass right after it's been sprayed, you know what, Ryan and Robert, that sounds like a you problem, not the pesticides problem. Okay? That sounds like a you problem. I mean, because it's as if these people are making the statement that once you apply something to the grass, that grass is now radioactive for the next 100 years. That's their that's what they're implying, and nothing could be further from the truth. Because let me tell you, I treat lawns that have dogs on them, cats on them, kids running around on them. And provided the post-application dry down and or watering in as needed has been observed, there are no problems. But I think we've gone into this phase of society that I keep on talking about where the safety of your children and the safety of your dog and cat is not your problem. Oh, we make it everybody else's problem. And I don't think that's a good direction for us to go.
Robert, you're a well-spoken and a convincing man. How would you handle this one? Because boy howdy, it's a tall wall to climb right there.
This place is called Scarsdale.
Scarsdale, New York. Yep, Scarsdale, New York.
If you flew me into Scarsdale, I'd say, my good people of Scarsdale, New York, my name is Robert Lee Palmer Jr. I have served this fine country for 16 plus years, closer to 17 at this point, and I have fought for your rights for free thinking and the ability to have open access to the internet and to educate yourself. With that being said, I urge you all to continue to educate yourself on these pesticides that you claim are so harmful. Furthermore, I would challenge you to go home and look at your common household cleaning chemicals that you use. I guarantee you they are not bio or green safe as you claim them to be here in this courtroom or wherever the heck they are at the moment. And I would ask you to read the instructions on the back of them, your simple household cleaner that tells you to wear a specific PPE when you clean your toilet. And I would ask you, how many times have you used that proper PPE, being protective equipment, right? Are you putting on gloves when you use that Clorox spray, right? Do you know the ingredients that's in your toothpaste? Do you know the ingredients that's in the Subway sandwich that you just had for lunch and dinner? So if you look at these things, at the processing chemicals for the chicken that you eat that's got the USDA certified on it that you've been eating since you've been yay high, I urge you to continue to educate yourself and look a little bit deeper. There's this thing called the material safety data sheet. You should really get into that, read into it, and see what the actual science says, rather than what your mom and dad are telling you or some anecdotal information they picked up on a Twitter or a Reddit feed. Thank you for your time. That is all. That's what I would say to them.
Mic drop. Boom.
And I would literally drop the mic.
So I mean, I think that's important, and it, yeah, like just that whole point of have some free thought and where are you getting your sources? Just teaching critical thinking. Again, I'm not saying that we're 100% right. I do want to share this thing here. Let me throw this over to Jay Pink real quick. He could throw this up. So it's interesting that they made that mention, the one lady there about they're going to get it on their skin, right? And I want to get a little bit deep here. This is a little bit of a Joe Knows Turfish here. We'll dive in on our burns because I think this is important. This is a study out of NC State that was completed, I want to say, a couple years ago. And what they were looking at here, gentlemen, was dislodgement of active ingredients of pesticides, right? And so dislodgement means, could you rub it on a soccer ball? Could you, skim across there? You making a slide tackle in soccer and get it on your leg? What are we dealing with here? So what's interesting is they chose 2,4-D. And Ray, I'll let you talk about KOC, right? The adsorption potential of a particular product, but also, too, can you talk for a minute about 2,4-D's adsorption potential, right? And explain KOC real quick, and also the solubility of 2,4-D relative to many of the other herbicides that we currently use.
Okay, first of all, KOC is how attracted a given molecule is to other materials. And secondly, 2,4-D as a rule is relatively water soluble in its most common form. And I'm assuming now, Ryan, this would be 2,4-D amine. And
yep.
Here's a little interesting fact. The more hydrophilic or water soluble a particular chemical is, the less easily it passes through skin. So the more water soluble something is, the lower the rate of dermal absorption, versus if a pesticide is solvent based or more solvent and oil soluble, then your rate of absorption through the skin is a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
But the other point of a product being water soluble as being potentially good is if I had to mitigate the hazard from a three-way application on an area used by the public, the steps I would take, for example, would be make the application, let the product dry, and then as soon as practical within the next 24 hours, irrigate, let dry, and reopen.
Perfect.
Because
and that's the whole.
time,
Go ahead.
and at that time, Ryan, what would happen is any product that has not been absorbed into the weeds or the grass will have been flushed off the surface, where here's what happens to that remaining 2,4-D, etc. It is bound to the soil, and then immediately microbes start digesting and degrading that remaining residue. You won't find it in the 60 days from now. It'll be totally gone.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, JPIG, throw that chart back up real quick. Let's walk through this. So we'll throw this up in the show notes too. It's a really interesting thing to read and learn about. And again, them using such a soluble active ingredient, right, was important because I think they were trying to highlight that, hey, okay, here's about the worst it could be because number one, this is the most widely used herbicide in turf grass, and number two, it's also one of the more soluble products, meaning that when you re-wet it, the propensity for it to be transferred or dislodged is much higher, right, than one that doesn't or is not nearly as soluble. So if you look at this chart, they did this in over 2 years, right? A couple different treatments, one in 2014, another in 15, right? So as you look across the chart, the DAT there, so 0 DAT, that's days after treatment. So they're looking at that the first day, right? And they're looking at it right after they treated it. How much can they dislodge? So we're looking at hybrid Bermuda grass, so probably a shorter height of cut, so less leaf surface, and we're at 2.3% of AI, 9.9% on perennial ryegrass, which is probably a little bit taller, a little bit more biomass right up on top, so the propensity to have more AI is present. So an hour after treatment, though, we go down all the way to 1/10 of 1% from 2.3% on the hybrid Bermuda, and then down to 0.5% on the perennial ryegrass. Now we take that across. This is unirrigated, so they've not taken and put any irrigation on this whatsoever. The following day, well, interesting thing that they found here, gentlemen, is that re-wet from dew, right? That's really the critical period because we're usually out of the reentry interval by this point, right? The following day, 1 day after treatment. But the dew that's on the ground, that's sort of that critical period where there could be the highest chance that you would have outside of somebody just walking through the spray, which we've talked about that before, and the idiotic nature that people seem to have around these materials, right? Hey, why is that guy in a full Tyvek suit spraying? Let me walk up to him and ask him real quick. Fuck. But anyway,
Jeez.
it's that day after. So as Ray was saying, Ray's strategy is damn near perfect, right? The way to reduce this, right, and get it down to sub 1%, right, the day after. And yeah, there is dislodgeable residues. People will go crazy and probably say, look, there's still something. Like, yes, but you know what? You're exposed to all those other things in the same, in similar quantities, right, of other carcinogenic chemicals and things like that. I'm not trying to sit here and gaslight you. I'm just saying, like, we've evolved as a species in spite of all the terrible shit that's around us. And let's be honest, it's gotten better over the years. Let's be honest, it's gotten a lot fucking better than it was a couple hundred years ago.
Way better. I mean, my goodness.
Man, I'll tell you what. There's nothing that goes well with my water like some lead pipes or lead pipes with my water, and I don't know what else. But anyway, point here is, this is something that we all need to be aware of, and this is the kind of research that you should be keeping up with so that you can answer these questions appropriately, right? And that little Jimmy isn't going to come to Scarsdale and come to the playoff game and get himself sick. It's probably when he comes over to the homecoming dance and dances with your daughter and takes her out afterwards. He's got something to worry about, right? Jimmy 2,4-D works just as good as penicillin. Keep that in mind.
We hope.
All right.
We can only hope.
All right. Hey, Dan, go dancing with the dean's daughter. Weird things happen. I didn't ask for it. It just happened. So all right, moving on here. Let me jump back over to articles. And so the pesticide double standard, boys. This one came up, and it's a opinion piece, but I had to put it in here as a burn because again, this is just more BS. So pesticide residue can be found everywhere in the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the water we drink. A growing body of evidence suggests that herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides cause approximately 20,000 deaths and 385 million poisonings worldwide each year. Okay. They also linger in the soil for decades, harming soil fertility and leading to emergence of herbicide-resistant weeds that threaten biodiversity. And yet, despite these negative effects, industrial agriculture still relies on pesticide use. In 2017, global pesticide use had grown to 4 million tons per year, an increase of nearly 81% since 1990. Pesticide manufacturers often claim that their products are crucial to combating global hunger, but up to 828 million people, more than 10% of the world's population, still go to bed hungry every night. Clearly, the answer cannot be found in using more pesticides. Wow, there's about 4 logical fallacies just in that fucking paragraph alone. I'm sorry, that was my opinion on this opinion piece. So anyway, they go on to talk about, hey, the global food crisis compounded by COVID-19, the Ukraine war, hey, we need to transform and get away from, again, this is kind of the whole EU mindset, right? We need to get away from this stuff because, look how vulnerable we are. We need all these fossil fuels to make this stuff work, and that we're just relying on it as a crutch. And hey, listen, yeah, it's bad right now. And I don't think anybody's saying that, hey, we should figure out how we should maintain the status quo forever, right? I don't think anybody is advocating that, but there are a lot of people that are having a common sense approach saying, hey, it's going to take us a little while to figure this shit out, and while we do, hey, we're going to have to use some of this stuff and wean ourselves off, not just literally, drop the fucking hammer and to use a pre-show analogy, we'd like to use the small scalpel and not the towel and the hammer, to cut off the supply,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll being said, gentlemen, how do we get through the message that we're in this really weird period where I think, all those events, these world events over the last several years have highlighted the need that, hey, we've got to evolve, right, and get better at how we maintain crops and how we grow food and how we get it to people and distribute it, logistics, everything related to all that. But we can't just turn our backs on all this stuff. So again, Palmer inspired me so much with his soliloquy before. I'm asking, how would you approach and message the idea that, listen, it's going to be weird for a little bit. We're going to have this in-between time, but I assure you we're going in the right direction. But we just can't stop doing what we're doing, for the sake of, we don't want to do that anymore. What do you say to that?
Did we lose Ray? Ray kind of. Okay.
No.
No.
It's you have the floor right now, Robert.
No, I got it.
Ray, pause. Ray really doesn't get erections; just his entire body gets erect. It's pretty interesting. Sheila likes that about him.
He was standing in a position just frozen. But I got it. Good people of Europe. Look, I understand that we are concerned of the use of pesticides, and you don't really see the proof in the pudding as far as being able to cure world hunger. But I wouldn't necessarily point the finger at pesticides. The economical system that we've developed based off capitalism is more so a driving factor than everyone not being able to have adequate food on their table at night. It's not the pesticides' fault. It's greed. We need to love thy neighbor. We need to share. There's plenty of billionaires around, plenty of money. I have a backyard garden, and every year I grow food, and I can't consume it all. And I think at the end of my season, how are there still so many hungry people out there? But that's beside the point. I digress. We have to take incremental steps to get to this goal that you so desire. We're continuously doing scientific-based research on the best way to do that. And quite frankly, if we just stopped doing what you ask us to do, that number of 10% of being able to be fed would increase to 30% because we would have huge crop failures globally, and you would be even hungrier than you are today. Drop mic.
Boom.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, J Pink brought up something very salient and important in that when these people talk about deaths caused by pesticides, did
Mhm.
you know that a majority of those deaths are literally intentional? And when I say intentional,
Oh, I know where you're going with
okay,
this.
no, I gotta bring this up. We haven't had this kind of talk in a little while, so here it comes.
This is
Ryan.
Turf's Up Radio stuff here.
Okay. In these developing countries, the most common means of suicide or homicide is either paraquat or organophosphate insecticides. That is the most common way for these pesticides to cause deaths. To a smaller extent, there are accidental poisonings, but here's the factor driving the reason why so many of these less expensive legacy chemistries are even around in these countries is that these legacy chemistries are way less expensive versus what is being employed in the first world and second world. Because I come from the time of legacy chemistries, and so it is still a little bit of sticker shock for me when I see, oh my goodness, a bottle of that is how much? Because, I come from the time of something costing only $10 to $20 per acre to apply, if not a little bit less. So capitalism, that's right. Almighty dollar or euro. But when you say stopping all of this will, cause greater hunger due to crop failure, you're not wrong. But it's also a double-edged sword, because I'm familiar with the almost organized crime type relationship that big agro has with these growers, where I'm familiar with the terms of sale and usage on a lot of these genetically modified seeds. I mean, you think you got involved with the Yakuza or the Mafia with the way that, the terms of usage are written, because my goodness.
They don't either, though.
Yeah, you buy that seed, you plant that seed, that company now owns you and your entire family. And
well,
that is not an
from the company
exaggeration.
perspective, right? Not even from the company perspective. We're dealing with a populace that wants no pesticides, no herbicides, no GMOs. They want everything as if we were still in the Garden of Eden. But
we were still in the garden.
They don't even understand where their food comes from. I have
they have
given
no
people food out of my garden, and then they look at it like, oh, but it's got bugs on it. Well, what did you think it was going to have on it? It's in nature.
Robert,
hugging trees just like you want it. But they don't know what to do with it. If I gave someone a whole chicken, the average person on the street right now, if I came up to you and I said, here you go, here's a chicken, what would they do with it? They don't understand what they're even asking for.
They have no concept.
You have no life sustaining skills, none whatsoever. You
none.
don't know how to read a map. You don't know which way is north. You don't know your left from right without using the phone in your pocket. All you know is push button, it gets delivered to my house. But you love your convenience and your comfortability of life, but then you want us to go back into the olden days. You consume more meat. The average American consumes more meat in a weekly basis than a person would 50 years ago within a month.
I kind of beg
It's
to
all
differ on
there.
that point. I beg to differ on the meat consumption part, but I do agree with people not understanding where their food comes from. And, Robert, you said something very interesting because, in my vegetable eating days, I took it as a very good sign if when I was washing some produce, a little something came up floating in the sink. Because do you know why? Because at least I knew, or at least I knew that there was nothing on that vegetable that would give me pause. Because I know darn well what goes on in production, vegetables and fruits. And my God, I've known for the longest time that whatever they do on, fruits and vegetables, whatever they do on fruits and vegetables, sure as hell ain't allowed on a playing field or even on your home lawn. Did you know that, Robert? It ain't allowed. I mean, because
and then it's got like a 30-day cycle before you can consume it. Yeah.
No, it's got a 30-day cycle before you can even re-enter that field.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I just have to question all of these people in these first world countries screaming and yelling about pesticides, even in the third world. And, guess what? My answer to them is very simple. Well, let's see. You banned or disallowed these materials in your home country, but by not allowing it there and still wanting to consume the produce and the products that are dependent on those same pesticides, you all have just exported your problem. Because, Robert, up until the whole EU green thing, like I want to say prior to 2000, all the stuff that they're screaming and yelling about was widely used all throughout Europe and the UK.
Big old Bayer. Yeah, no, I know.
Bayer's, Syngenta, BASF, all them. Yeah. But then here's the thing.
Yeah, you know what's happened since then? You have these companies out in Poland and what used to be Ukraine, where, like you said, it just became exported type manufacturing deals where they take these things that are illegal now in the EU, and then you order it from these other countries. That's what they're doing here. Not to snitch on anyone or anything like that, but I've been here long enough to figure out how these guys are still having beautiful lawns without any issues, and it's always a way. You just export your issue. It's like the Prohibition era. You
export your issue and
alcohol illegal, and what happens? Chicago becomes the most infamous city. Well, Matt Martin said it's over, so I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, Matt Martin says we're done.
We're on to the next thing. So listen, no, I think it's one of those situations, right, where there's so many voices and there's so much stuff, right, that gets spun in a way that portrays this industry as bad. And listen, like, if there were better ways that worked and there were better ways that were commercially viable, if there were better ways that kept food on our table and roofs over our heads, right, the people that do this for a living, then I think we'd be doing them. I think it's not a mess, not something where people are shunning it. So we'll see how it goes, but we've got to get through this weird in between phase and keep moving forward. That's all we can do. Yeah. Speaking of moving forward, let's jump into those returns, J Pink. La 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 la.
I'm back.
All right, so let's jump in here to one of the bigger issues of the week, right, as it pertains to turf and natural grass. In the NFL here, the NFL Players Association is calling on 6 venues to change their current playing surfaces, saying that the turf in these stadiums is statistically higher in game injury rates involving non-contact and lower extremity injuries. So basically what they're doing here, fellas, there is a particular type of synthetic turf. So when you guys see those synthetic pitches or synthetic fields on television in the NFL or other sports, there's basically 2 different types of turf fibers, right, that they make. One is a monofilament. It kind of looks just like a blade of grass, so it's one piece of yarn that's stitched up through the backing and it sticks straight up. The other type is what's called a slit film, and I'll see if I can get a good picture here to show the difference. But the slit films are what the NFLPA is really, really worried about, right? Because they've got research, internal and proprietary research that we do not get to see that shows that there are higher rates of injury instances on those particular services. And so, I guess it's an interesting thing here where the players are basically saying, hey, you're creating an unsafe workplace for us, right? And we're going to pitch a fit, right, until we get our way. So, the owners have kind of piped up here in the last 7 days. I think it was earlier this past week here where they went and said, oh, hey, we've got our own data. And our own data shows that there's no difference in injury incidence between synthetic turf and natural grass. Or it's actually what they meant to say. They took one slide and basically kind of combined a whole bunch of different injuries and said, look, they're actually getting closer. Whereas the line was statistically significant before, now as of the 21 data that they have, they're saying that those things are not an issue any longer. And so, I guess from I want to hear some reaction from you fellas, and then I'll give a little bit more background on this here. But do the guys in the NFL, do they have a leg to stand on? Pun fully intended.
I think they do. Even when you go to a hospital, there are certain standards for the employees. One of the most interesting ones were like ergonomics, right? I left the medical field and I went to explosive ordnance disposal technician, but one of the certifications that you get in the military hospital is HIPAA, not HIPAA, JCO standards and something like CAP accredited for your labs. And when you do those inspections, they implore you, in order to pass, you must have ergonomically sound workspaces for those employees. Things like carpet tunnel, you have to have like adequate seating areas, proper seating, desk to ratio profiles. That's when you'll have like your mouse pads that have the rest on it for your wrists and when you're typing. So even in the civilian world, or in the Army world, within the civilian aspect of it, there are things that you must make sure that your employees are being reduced from extra risk of becoming injured while they're doing their jobs. So I think they have a leg to stand on, and they should definitely stand on that leg and continue to press the issue, and make sure that they have adequate playing surface areas that's not going to lead to injury, because that's a way of life for them. That's their lifestyle. That's their livelihood. And if you're putting something in that could threaten that, where my career could have been 10 years long, now it's shortened to 3 years, and what
a lot of money
due to the lineage? Yes, a lot of money and generational wealth that could be handed down to your family members. You've just jeopardized my whole lineage as far as I'm concerned because of you and your artificial turf. I think they have a leg to stand on. They should lean in.
But it's coming from the owners, that transfer of wealth, right? Nah, come on, we want to keep it because we're NFL owners. I mean, we're only worth several $1 billion, at the floor.
Yeah.
Right? Ray, what do you think?
Capitalism. That came full circle. Capitalism.
yeah.
I love capitalism. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there's a line in the sand we need to draw, right?
I think that overall, what does the data show? What is the data showing that even on a less than perfectly maintained natural grass field, what is the rate of injury versus a synthetic surface? What is the rate of injury? I mean, because I'm going to say that the numbers do not lie because, and I can tell you that it's all about what is the actual incidence of injury. And I know something else about artificial turf, in that surface is basically, it's a very hot surface as well. Unless, of course, they're going to innovate and put refrigeration coils underneath that turf surface. That it's still going to be a hot surface unless something is done. But for this, I say too that the NFL does have a leg to stand on, and I say they better start using it to kick some ass, because I do not think that the pluses of artificial turf surfaces outweigh their minuses.
Yeah, and I think that's and that's part of the issue, right? Is that there are certain parts of it that allow these facilities to be more than just sports stadiums, to host multiple events and things like that. But there's also a lot of that's taking place in natural grass, facilities as well. So the players are right to push this issue. I agree with what Robert said, that you have folks that have a span of somewhere between 3 and maybe 10, 12 years to make their money and their kids' money and their grandkids and so on, right? Generational wealth. And if it is in some way, shape, or form taken away from them simply because, well, hey, we wanted to have the latest and greatest synthetic turf, the economics just don't bear out there, right? And not only that, but it's a kind of dehumanizing way to treat your workers. I mean, imagine that, right? Imagine if you're an electrician, or you own electrical installation service, something like that. Have a bunch of electricians working for you. Say, you know what? Hey, I know that you want those insulated boots, but you don't need them. I mean, the boots, the regular steel toes I give you, they're fine. I mean, something bad could happen, but it's statistically insignificant, the fact that you may die or use be able to use your legs any longer, right, in a professional capacity, right? So it doesn't jive, right? It doesn't jive with what we expect out of our employers and what we expect out of any place where we're there to make a living. And I think that's one thing. I think the other part of this that's really concerning, right, that is kind of going under the radar right now, is the fact that so this one particular type of turf, this slit film. JP, go ahead and throw those pictures up if you got them ready and handy there. So this is the particular stuff in question that is sort of concerning, is they've split. There you go. Look at that. Oh wow, look at that too.
Boom, boom.
These yeah, look, they're going off. This particular type, where they take the individual fibers and they kind of break them apart, right? The idea is that this the more fiber surface right here, wider apart essentially, is going to help hold the infill, the rubber pellets you see flying up when they're on the field, hold that down a little bit so there's not so much spray. Things stay where they should be, and so that you still have essentially the same amount of shock attenuation, right, on the surface, generally speaking. It's also easy for you to get your cleats stuck in, more easily so than some of the other ones that are out there, the monofilament turf, and there's also a hybrid version of this where they mix this one with the slit film, and it's actually just a little bit safer. So long story short is this, fellas, is that by calling out the slit film, the NFLPA, they've highlighted an issue, but now at the NFL level and in college and even in NCAA, or excuse me, in high school, things like that, you've got people just in the last day or so that are going to their sports field managers and saying, hey, why did we put this shit in if you knew it wasn't safe? And here's the thing, nobody really knew that necessarily going in. This data is still proprietary and confidential to the NFL. The NFL conducts all this surveillance with their teams through the medical staffs, training staffs, right, and football ops staffs.
Time's up. It's over.
Time's up. It is over, Matt, because you're putting guys and gals that take care of these fields for a living in a bad spot by saying, hey, this is messed up, this is wrong, what did you have to do with it? And in many cases, they didn't have much to do with it, or even if they did and had an outsized role in that, they didn't have access and weren't allowed to see this data. So it's a really, really weird time. I hope that we can figure this out in the short term. And last thing I'll say is that I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter this week. The 2026 World Cup is here in the United States, and they are going to play in some of these big stadiums, a few of them that are closed in, that are domes, right? And there is a ton of research, probably the most non-golf related natural grass research that we've had in the States since the 94 World Cup, where we were trying to figure out the best ways to grow grass that's suitable for FIFA level competition and do it in some weird spots. So all that being said, interesting enough, and we'll see what happens here. J Pink, let's look at that last return here real quick here. And what a great story here. I'm encouraged by this. That shows that there's still good people in the world, Robert and Ray. So basically, there's a gentleman here that's taking care of the Wilson Bridge Cemetery. He's volunteered his time. Nearby neighbor Randy Studler figures he spent more than 600 hours and 450 gallons of fuel mowing, clearing, and taming the 5.7-acre landscape at the Pioneer Graveyard in recent years, as well as spraying moss and mold-covered headstones, taking care of it. Earlier this month, the Army veteran mowed the entire site and planted approximately 60 handmade wooden crosses in time for Veterans Day. All those labors of love were going before he retired a few weeks ago at the age of 74 from a 5-decade career operating his flooring business. So he's been doing this on the side, apparently, as he's run the flooring business, but now he's 74, retired. I can't imagine working that long. Ray, I just hope I live that fucking long. And now he's out there taking care of everything. What would you expect from an Army veteran, Robert Palmer?
I mean, hands down to that, man. He already served his country, and now he's serving his fellow brothers that's in the ground, brothers and sisters that's in the ground. The only thing I could say is that, I hope that he was running that through his business so he can get him a nice tax deduction along the way while he was providing his selfless service, because that's money, right? That's money that could have been going into his business. It could have been going on a vacation to wherever he, so desired. So you need to get that back somehow. Even though you're doing it from the goodness of your heart, he deserves some type of compensation. In the way that the world is today, I doubt anyone was giving it to him. So I hope that he was claiming that properly within this business. But hats off to that man. If I'm in that story inspired me into the way where, my goal is to have some sort of landscaping, lawn care type business. I'm definitely going to consider myself more of a boutique type of dealer when I'm done, because I don't need a whole bunch of accounts. I just need enough to make a very honest living. But if I so happen to be in a position to provide services like that to a veterans burial ground where I'm able to lay my head down, that man has definitely inspired me to pick up that torch for him and continue to carry it. I love what he's doing out there. And he did it in quiet, right? He didn't need to blast it all over where it say, hey, look at me, look what I'm doing. He just did it in honor, and that's what it's all about.
It's not charity if you have to make YouTube videos for your 300,000 followers and share them out on a weekly basis, right,
yeah,
Ray?
Exactly.
Exactly. You don't get any respect, and whatever. If you got to do it so be it. But you lose a little bit. You lose the for me when you do something to do it, but then you got to record it and put it on social media so everybody, hey, look at me, I'm doing it. You lose a little bit of
Yeah.
respect from me. And hey, I'm just a guy, so who cares if you lose my respect, right? But I don't. It's kind of like all the Memorial Day posts and Veterans Days posts that you see when they roll around 9/11, like every other day of the year. You don't think of us until this one day, and it doesn't hurt my feelings, but you don't really see me engage in those things, other than making a dedication inside of a video. If I just so happen to be dropping a video on those days. They don't really hold a lot of weight with me. It's
Well,
like the day when you have your birthday and then everyone says happy birthday to you on Facebook, and they don't even call you anymore. They just say happy. It's people you haven't heard from in years. So it just all fits into that same category for me. It's meaningless at that point.
I think the couple things I'd follow up with there is number one, that three things. Number one is I've found, at least in my midlife where I'm at, probably hopefully is maybe I make to 74, I don't know, is that the folks that have served this country, right, especially the ones that have served in forward areas, seem to have more reverence for the dead than most, right? Because I think they understand how hard it is to stay alive for a lot of people that aren't American and don't live in this country and don't understand how fortunate and blessed we are. Number one. Number two, that nobody's out there doing it for the paycheck. That's for damn sure. And I would hope that they want people to live a good and full life, right? And that just as Robert said, that we're fortunate to have these freedoms. We should take them seriously. So. And the second part I'll say is this, is that, if you feel like you need to make a video or something like that on Veterans Day or Memorial Day or whatever, to highlight veterans, I think that's fine. I think, it begs, for people to engage and stay put and be grounded in what American values are and all that kind of stuff. But if it becomes charity or something like that, hey man, just hop on the fishing charter, go out there and nibble on some pills, right? So the last thing I'll say is this. Maybe we should change the way that Facebook and social media works, Robert. I think what we need to do is just, acknowledge those happy events that happen, not just on your birthday, but any day. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you that watches this, go on to one of your friends' timelines, their Twitter feeds, whatever social media you use, and on some random day, just say, hey, I hope you took a good shit today. Just leave it there. All right. It is important. You got to stay regular. You got to keep that fiber intake up. I love it when it comes out with paper on it and you don't even have to wipe. That means everything is kosher. So, all right, JPEG, do we have any mailbag tonight?
Mail.
Mailbag, yes.
We do.
Oh boy. All right, throw it up there because I don't know. I can't see it.
That's okay. So do you remember Grass Thief from the
yes
on Thursday?
Yes, that was the guy that witnessed your location program.
Yes. He did get his
I'm from Charlotte. You are?
Mm-hmm.
He did get us.
Why do you sound like you're from Trenton?
He did get us the soil test here. Let me throw this up.
He seems like a nice guy.
He was super awesome. All right. So, I remember he was talking about the
so
levels,
he switched over to Homa.
And the organic matter. He was concerned about raising that and just trying to make things healthy.
Okay. The thing I'll say about the organic matter, he's at 1.54%. He's going to have no problem root cycling and generating an absolute metric shit ton of organic matter with Tahoma. By far the most biomass of roots that you'll see on any grass. Ray, I'll fight somebody on that one. The roots on it are impressive. They're deep. They're thick. Great mass. I mean, it's everything that you want to have, as far as that goes. So I'm not so much worried about that. let's go ahead and look at what he's dealing with here. I'm not quite sure what these. No, I'm assuming these are parts per million. I don't know. I can't tell.
Actually, that is the. If I'm looking at this correctly, that is the number of pounds per 1,000 square foot, and they're trying to equate that to adequacy. And you know what? I would say that all this guy would need in order to grow his Tahoma 31 is literally 0.1 to 0.2 pounds of nitrogen per month of growing season, stopping approximately a month before dormancy. That's all he needs, because he doesn't have an issue whereby his potassium is on the floor, his phosphorus is on the floor. No, he doesn't have anything particularly out of range or inadequate. Only wild card would be is if he starts to collect clippings, then he's going to need to consider adding in potassium and phosphorus to compensate for what he's removing. But other than that, if this is just talking about mowing a lawn and fertilizing it without doing any of that extra stuff, then all he needs is just nitrogen, and don't worry about adding quote unquote organic matter, because the only thing that I've seen come from adding organic matter or attempting to add organic matter is a depleted bank account and more work on your part to remove that excessive organic matter from the soil later when it causes you problems. There
you go. I think the only other thing we got to figure out is one, when he's going to come on the show, because he seems like a really interesting dude to talk to. I kind of like his mindset where he was like, I've been staring at this fescue and it hasn't been growing. And I saw my neighbors from Bermuda, and he went full deep six and said, you know what, we're not going to do, and we're not going to do some bullshit 419 or something like that. We're going all in on this. So the only other thing we got to figure out is how we're going to circumvent customs to send Robert Palmer over a couple square feet of Tahoma to throw in the ground over there and just FAFO.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Little care package.
I give you the secret address. We're good to go.
You do that. I'll send you a little care package.
I cracked that code. I like the recommendations that this soil test gave too, because it was right there in line with what you guys said. It was like, hey, don't worry about phosphorus or potassium. And they said, give a kick of sulfur. And I imagine that is to keep that pH in balance as he moves forward.
Well, not only that, to supply a little bit of sulfur. So literally at his given soil pH and sulfur levels, can you imagine his lawn on 0.2 pounds of AMS nitrogen per month?
Yeah, I mean, he'd be rolling. And I think it's good that you mentioned if he's catching his clippings, because he's probably real mowing. And I don't know. So here in Germany is weird because they never recycle. Like that's like bad juju. They've been convinced and doctrinized to where mulching is like the devil's fruit itself. So they catch all their clipping. Yeah, it's weird, right? But he may be catching clippings, and I think it was good that you put out, hey, if you are doing that, and I think it's worth mentioning, Ray, if he is catching his clipping, it's not like he has to go out with phosphorus and potassium throughout the entire year, right? He just needs to focus on a good application in the spring, or maybe spring
what
in
needs to
fall.
Be done, what needs to be done is not so much soil load, so much as just apply small, amounts in coincidence with nitrogen, because the nitrogen will drive uptake of the phosphorus and the potassium. I don't like the idea of people pounding P and K one time a year
times
just
a
with the
year.
hopes that it'll last that long. I mean, it's because
Okay.
that just doesn't make a lot of sense. My preference is to have it
That's common practice, right?
present.
That's what they're being told and taught. The easy
Yeah,
button,
but then
right?
no, or actually, that's kind of like the old way of doing it, which
Mhm.
is fine and good if you're dealing with something where you cannot get in there and make additional applications. But I'm just saying that if you are growing Bermuda grass, you are making small nitrogen applications throughout the season. That's just how you maintain Bermuda. It's opposite of a cool season grass where you cut your in the summer and you got to take it back up in the fall. I mean, if he's
Right.
growing Bermuda, he's fertilizing from late spring until about a month before dormancy. He's just constantly feeding in small amounts. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that was, especially when he goes back and listens to this, I think it was good to flesh that out for him. Assuming it's a him.
And,
Yeah.
and it's this guy where, let's see, what do you think, Ryan? Trenton or Newark?
I'm gonna say
which one is it?
that our friend has seen some shit in his day, and we'll have to keep it squarely on lawn care. He may have gotten in a fight or two. I don't know. I'm postulating here, but hey, he seems like a nice guy. I'd like to talk to him
because he doesn't sound like he's from the Carolinas. All right. I mean,
no, he doesn't sound like BB or
he
any
sounds
of those
like
guys.
he's from. No, he sounds more like he's from the. Let's see. How shall I say it? The Italian part of Jersey.
Hey, there you go. There you go. But not Jersey Shore.
Just
Definitely
saying.
not that. So
enough said.
All right.
Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, hey, listen, this was fun. Robert Palmer, sincerely, first, thanks for being on here for filling in for Matt. I know he wants to be back soon. He will be back soon. But what greater way to have somebody sit in his chair for the night, all the way 7,500 miles away from Ray and me in the middle. So hey, we made a worldwide DeMay sandwich tonight. Gosh, it feels good, boys. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys on the next one.